All right, so welcome back, and here we are in Los Angeles, California, with the one, the only Jay Abraham, who's in terms of our field, in terms of the field of personal and professional development, in terms of not even personal professional development. I mean, you're the marketing genius that you have transcends this field. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about. First off, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, you could probably summarize what you do and who you've worked with better than I could.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, sure. What I do is a combination. I am a unique marketing expert. I'm a business growth specialist. I'm a profit booster, and I'm a finder of hidden opportunities and overlooked opportunities and windfall profits. And it's a very dynamic process. It sort of depends on the situation with the type of business. And I've been doing this for longer than I'd like to remember, 25 plus years around the world, 460 or 70 industries. I've done a lot of very prominent people. I've done a lot of companies that have risen fast, like Inc. 500. I've done 12 of those.
You did something with Entrepreneur Magazine, did you?
Entrepreneur, Investors, Business Daily, Success Magazine, Tony
You've
Robbins.
Worked with Tony Robbins. You worked with anybody and everybody across the board, and you've helped them really increase their profits. What are some of the biggest increases you've done with companies?
Well, let's see. Probably the singularly biggest. We took a company from 300,000 to 500 million in 2 years. That was pretty good. I have a little company I'm working with right now. It's in the chiropractic field. We went from 6 million to 60 in 2 years. That's pretty good. I took a little company from 20,000 to 13 million in 15 months. That was pretty good. Everything is relative to, I mean, you got to have the capacity to manage the growth. When I was an entrepreneur, I was only there for a year, and we went in 9 months from 800,000 to 7 million. So
that's
it
wild.
Depends. Well, but it isn't. When I say this, the key that I have is most people don't realize how much more performance, productivity, it's not dissimilar to what you teach, profit and impact, the same effort, time, opportunity, market, advertisement, sales approach can make if you shift it to a higher performing. And you know, most of them are not strategic either. We're very strategic. We don't do anything unless it is very strategic, and by strategic it means it's going to maximize or optimize the short-term effort, but it's going to, almost like non-pocket billiards, regular billiards, every shot sets up the next. And it's a sort of a very integrated strategy of trying to make sure everything you do sets up the repeat sale or the new opportunity or the referral or the new market entry. And it's a little harder to explain, but it's a very powerful process.
So you're saying that most business owners don't think that way at all?
Most business owners are, first of all, tactical. They're not strategic. 95% of all business owners don't even have any goals. The few that have goals, they're very abstract. Like, I want to make $1 million. They don't reverse engineer it to really understand what has to happen, you know, by month, by year, by product, by market, by activity. And all you got to do is put some discipline. And also there are ways to work on what I call the geometry of a business. You can multiply, surprising as this is going to sound, Chris, by as much as 21 times the performance of an ad, of a salesperson. Not always, but easily you can improve them 50 to 300% of leads that come in. You can convert more. We've seen lead conversions triple. We've seen headlines changed on an ad bring in 10 times more either prospects or sales. We've seen, I mean, the way we say it is it costs people the same fixed amount to run an ad, whether it pulls 3 sales or 33. It costs you the same to dispatch a salesperson this week, whether he or she makes 5 presentations or 55. It costs you the same to make those presentations where they close 1 out of 5, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 2. It costs you the same to effect a sale, whether it's $100 or $500. It costs you the same to attract a buyer, whether they buy one time and never buy again, buy one time every 6 months, every 3 months, every month, every week. But if you can take activities that were pulling 3 responses and get them to pull 13, if you can take salespeople who were making 3 presentations and get them to make 6, if you can take people who were closing 20%, now they're closing 50, if you can get sales that were 100 and now they're 250, all of a sudden the combination of all those elements just skyrockets massively the sales and the corresponding profit of a business. I don't know if that's true.
No. I mean, I hear that, and now some of that sounds obvious. If you could get somebody to make X amount, how do you go into a corporation that you're working with and make all those factors happen?
Well, there's two ways. When I do it personally, I have a knowledge base, frankly, to die for, because I've been involved with something like 100,000 different advertising experiments, 20,000 sales. I've been online, offline. We know 93 different referral systems. So on a very individualized, I can customize the process. But the key to it all is called funnel vision versus tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is what most people in an industry possess unknowingly. They're very good at what they do in the industry, but all they know from a selling, a revenue generating, a business building modality is what they've observed or learned in that industry. And so everyone's doing things pretty much the same thing. I got started very young, and what I learned was that people in industry A market, their strategies, their business generating approaches are usually totally different than people in industry B, and different than ones in C and D and E. And if you can take the most universal elements of a lot of them and put them together into a hybrid, you can run rings around your competition. We say it, a strategy that's as common as dirt in one industry can have the power, the profitability, the preemptiveness, meaning it distinguishes your business far above all your competitors, of an atom bomb if you're the first or the only one to understand it and use it in your business, and you multiply its impact if you use combinations. I don't know if that's too abstract.
No, I'm getting. I mean, it's like, so what you're saying essentially is that you've had so much experience with different people from different industries or different types of companies that you can map across the strategies inside.
Well stated. I'm going to make you take you to the UN. You're a good interpreter. Yes.
But map across those strategies to any business to make that business more successful. And because the business owner in a business is so focused on what they're focused on, they miss all the peripheral stuff.
Well stated. Very perfectly said. Yeah. And the tragedy is most business owners, they unknowingly limit and restrict the number of buyers, customers, clients, patients they could generate, the size of the sales they could be doing, the frequency or the combinations, the number of referrals they could be getting, because they default to these very low yielding activities and they don't realize how high is high. I mean, it's no different than what you probably teach about personal achievement and possibility, not just thinking but achieving. They don't really have a clue, and I think that also they get not jaded, but they get content with mediocrity. I don't think they know that. It's not a criticism like, oh, but I don't think they accept anywhere close to the level of performance, profitability, and achievement that their investment and their opportunity and their effort could yield.
So mining that business for all the extra profit that you could pull out of it. I remember years ago I listened to one of your audio tape sets. I mean, this is how I knew about you, and I know. I mean, for me, truly, you are the expert in this field.
Thank you.
And, yeah, it's. And when I got the audio tapes and I was listening to it, it's like it was mind expanding. Because it's like, I guess I was like with business owners that had that tunnel vision that you talk about, because it's like, well, you mean there's so much more profit that you can pull out. But I would imagine that business owners, when they hear this, they may come from the same perspective that I do. Well, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's obvious if we increase there, if we increase there, if we increase there, but yet they still don't do it.
Well, I mean, it's almost...
First they don't see it, and then they don't do it. And then when they hear it, they think it's obvious, and they're like, oh, of course. But
well, it's funny, and I'm going to give you two answers. One is there's a concept of return on investment. You understand investing, whether it's stock, whether it's real estate, and most people would be tickled pink to get 20% today, wouldn't they?
For sure, yeah.
But marketing and strategy shifting is probably the greatest ROI you can get, and business owners don't look at it that way. You can make that investment produce tens of thousands of % annual yield if you know how to mine it. That's first thing. Second is, most people don't go into business really to make a fortune. They go into business to escape control of somebody else, or they go into business as a response to a life crisis. They get fired, or they get divorced, or they have a drug problem and they get redeemed and they want to go out. So they don't go in it trying to maximize it. Also, most small entrepreneurs are, unbeknownst, they're power mongers. They want to do it all. And the only way that you can really maximize what you're doing is leveraging yourself through the efforts, the resources, the activities of others, whether they be staff, joint ventures, part-time, independent contractors, and you have to understand how to do that. But I think a lot of small entrepreneurs, I think they're stuck because they've never been trained. I mean, the concept of building business wealth, the concept of multiplying profits is it's a science. It's not an art. I think people get all intimidated. They think that you got to be gifted to do it. It's very predictable. Science is easy for anyone to do if you'll take the time to understand how everything interrelates.
So how typically does it work when you go in and you sit down with a business owner, and let's say they're making, because I know your sweet spot is probably between 2 and 50 million.
Yeah, that's about. I like companies that are owner controlled, so that we can deal with somebody who can take the action, but not so big, and can't be too small and unstable because it needs to have solid capital to let us really parlay on what they're doing. If it's too big, there's too many tiers of management and insular thinking, and it's too hard to do. So that's a sweet spot usually.
So now, how would it work? Can you give me an example of
Sure.
something that you work with, and how you'd go through that process? Or?
Yeah, I'll see if I can make it simple, then you can interpret it because you're good at that today. And I haven't had enough coffee. The key, we break it down 2 ways. First thing I always do is look at what's revenue driving right now. What's making the business work, even if it's not working the way it could. And we identify all the activities in place that they don't recognize. And then we break it into elements, processes, and we try to measure and quantify how those are doing. Let me give you an example. I did a bigger chain, actually. I did a $400 million radio chain a couple of years ago, and they had about 200 or 300 salespeople all over their system. And I came in and I had a day to transform their business, not a lot of time. So before I did it, I identified all the different revenue generating activities, i.e. processes that went on in that business. And they're targeting prospects, making presentations, selling either, and I don't know if you know radio, there's drive time, there's midday time, there's less desirable time, there's packages. So I looked at all the different kinds of times they could be selling packages, best time, worst time. I looked at the different markets they could be selling, car dealers, retailers, independent, chains, national, local. I looked at the promotional events they did, concerts and things like that, and I identified in the 400 people the 80-20 rule, you know, the Pareto principle, the 5 or 6 people in each of those categories whose performance dramatically, like 2 or 3 times, like say you sold 5 times as many car dealers as anybody else, or you sold 10 times more of the lousy time in the radio station. Or I also looked at who sold best against alternative media that had better ratings. Like maybe TV has 10 times the ratings and it's a better buy. And I figured out what each of those people did consciously and subconsciously to do it, and we got them in the open to identify, articulate the concept, and we taught those concepts to everybody. So let's say that right now people are average at doing everything, but if I can teach you how the top person, it's what you do, modeling, how the top person opens car dealing accounts, how the top person basically sells not just the good time but the bad time, the bad time segment's less desirable, how the top people sell the promotional packages, and everyone learns how to raise the bar.
Do you actually do that? You work
yeah.
with? Really?
Well, that's one of the things we do. But again, what we try to do is, and I got on a little tangent, first thing I do is try to maximize what they are already doing. But you can't do that until you first identify what they're already doing. And what they're already doing in the macro is useless. You got to break it down to more of the micro. As I said, let's take...
so where is it flowing in from? Where are the revenues?
Yeah, but also what are the driving components where it can break down? For example, people who sell in the field, they got to target the market. They got to get an appointment. They got to either sit down or get the appointment to come to them or do it by phone. They got to be able to have a presentation that closes well. They got to close them. They can either upsell them. They got to have a sustain. There's like about 20 things in every situation that is room to break down. Or
it sounds like a lot of analysis. I mean, that's
well, it's. I mean, if you look at any function in life, okay, you live, you get up, you take a shower, you go to the bathroom, you eat, you get dressed, you brush your teeth, not necessarily those orders, you brush your hair, you know, you read the paper. I mean, there's a bunch of things you do. And if you wanted to make your day more efficient or your or your body healthy, you might be able to change 2 or 3 of those, and it might change everything. But yeah, it's not really any different. It's just that it's almost like saying, okay, in this room, there's a lot of atoms, but nobody sees it. I've learned where the leverage is and where the breakdown exists.
Right.
And I've learned that you can't leverage up an activity till you know what it is and how it's doing. How do you know how much, how do you know if you can make it better till you know what it's doing? If you find out, well, this person is able to call 10 people on the phone and get 3 appointments. And of the 3 appointments, 2 show up. So 10 really produce 2. Well, the first thing you try to do is say, well, how can he call 15 and get 7? And you work on that. Then after you get that, then they got to make either a presentation on the phone, in person, and then you want to look and see how that presentation is closing. Not how many appointments you get, but how many presentations to the appointments, either in person or by phone, you're closing. And then you figure out how can you make the closes better. Then you look at what the average sale is. You say, how can we make that higher ethically? What other things can I add to it? Then you look at the duration of purchase. How many repurchases occur from that client, from that buyer? Then you ask, how can I make it more? If you only have one product to sell, how can I source other products that are complementary to create a stream? Then when you have nothing else to sell with them, you ask, how many ways can I ethically monetize them to get more utilization out? How many referrals? And it's like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really does. It's I see what you do is very unique, because I've worked with a lot of consultants over the years, and I've kind of gotten burned on consultants, quite frankly.
And I don't think most consultants, very frankly, are worth paying for, because there's an old adage: they borrow your watch to tell you the time, and they charge you for it.
Right, exactly.
Or they give you a huge report that you're supposed to interpret, and then they're gone, except their bill's still there.
So now when you do the analysis of a business and you know what to look for, and you say, okay, we've got to do this, what's the next step?
Well, we do 2 things. I don't do a lot of it because it's very expensive. We do $40,000 a day, what I'll call makeover consults, where we look at the business from about every CAT scan vantage point we can. We look for correlations, implications, anomalies, for how to maximize what they're doing. I didn't finish. When you're done maximizing, only then we add more areas of revenue.
Right.
Yeah, because it's stupid to go outside when you can make the same effort the same
right. It's
time.
like the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, we do that first. You're very good at interpreting. I wish I could talk like you. Then, if the company's big enough and has enough upside, we'll work with them long term and take a modest fixed fee, and we'll take a share of the increased revenue, the new revenue streams, the new profits.
How long does it take to do the analysis from? And I suppose it depends on the size of the company and whatnot. But because if $40,000 a day, how long does it take to find out how to maximize what they've got, and then
we can usually figure it out in 1 to 2 days. But
no kidding.
Well, but there's a reason. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I have 200 question assessments that they sneak up on you, and they look at every vantage point of connection, of performance, of implication, of leverage, improvement or breakdown. So before I ever see you, I know more about your business, and I ask you questions you've probably never even asked yourself. But you realize I understand I couldn't manage day to day. It's not my skill set, but I understand the revenue inner workings of businesses probably better than the people sometimes running them, because I look at it, from a more global sort of a perspective, and I understand all the different, what I'll call the money connections, the dots that have to be connected. Or
you can see things other people can't see.
I see dead people, yes.
You see dead people. No, I'll use the analogy. Sometimes I said, when Donald Trump walks down a city street in New York and he looks at a building,
he sees what it could be.
Yeah, rather than like the guy serving coffee on the street corner looks at the same building, sees something totally different.
Perfect analogy. Yeah, no, it's very similar to me, because I see how much more you could be doing with it. And when you look at my track record, on the one hand, it's almost unbelievable, but on the other hand, it's really very understandable, because most people accept a fraction of what the business, the effort can do. If you could make your ads pull 3-4 times, this is a classic example. People come to me, or online marketers, and they'll say, Jay, I'm getting 20,000 visitations or hits a month, and we're closing 0.5%. I need to get 200,000. And I'll say, whoa, that's so much harder, more expensive. and more difficult than just closing 5%. Let's work on getting more of the people coming through the door to buy and getting them to buy again and again and monetize them. But most people are just, I'm not sure why. All I know is that most small, medium-sized business owners, up to probably $75, $100 million, they're so engulfed in the business.
I know I've thought that way myself at times. I mean, what you just described is like, oh yeah, well we get 200,000.
Yeah.
But there's another way to look at it that makes a lot more sense.
Well, I mean, we teach that there's three ways to grow any business. The first is the most difficult and the one everyone defaults to. It's adding more buyers, more customers, more clients. The second is getting those people to spend more every time they purchase. The third is to get them to come back more often or have more utility value. Those last two are so much easier to do and they cost you nothing. The first one is hard. It's like buying your first, like you do seminars. The first people that come, that's the most difficult. After you get them in, they have an experience with you, they trust you, you offer them a spectrum of specialized programs. It's not terribly hard to get them to move forward, and the cost of doing that is time. It's not capital, but going to the outside market, it's very expensive. So most people, their focus is on the wrong thing. And we just try to, we're very pragmatic. I mean, what I say of myself is I'm super logical. Is I just know, I don't get diverted by emotion. I don't get diverted by, not ignorance, but naivete. I don't get diverted by limited thinking, which we're like ruthlessly focused on where the highest and best performing leverage lies in a business. I mean, a lot of people might, let's just take an example. Let's say you have a business right now and it's doing $1 million. And your goal is 10 million. Well, first of all, I want to know why that goal. Well, if your goal is because you're making 100 grand, you want to make $1 million, and the only way you can see it is to go 10 times. I say, well, stop, Chris. If you don't change the model, you got right now a 2,000 square foot, retail store, and you got 3 employees, and you got $100,000 worth of inventory. If you want to do 10 million, you're going to have 30 people. You're going to have to have 20,000 square feet. You're gonna, and you're going to have management. Is that what you want? Or there's a way to get the same people to spend 5 times as much. There's a way to make the same people buy 4 times more often, so you can make the same amount of money with 1/10 the effort, the expense, the management.
With the same infrastructure.
And I go, oh, I never thought about that. But a lot of people don't question their motives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I question everything.
I am curious about how you got into all this, because you have a tremendous life experience, and
yeah, the story is very fascinating. Yeah. It would have been sad, but it turned out very positive. I got married the first time, and I'm not saying that to be coy. I've been married 3 times. I got married the first time when I was 18. I had 2 kids at 20, and the need of somebody 40, and the world didn't care. I didn't go to college, and I'm not saying that with pride. It's just a clinical statement. And I gravitated I started out being what I'll call expense side of businesses, where I got hammered down in very low compensation because I did things that employers saw cost money. I very quickly moved to the revenue generating side, but because I had no formal skill set, nobody would give me a salary. They would give me a little desk in their office, and I'd get a share of new accounts I opened, or new leads that converted that I generated, or deals I set up. Or
so from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, well, marketing, selling,
sales,
anything would generate revenue. I mean, I bounced a lot of deals, but when you only earn if you perform, you figure out really quickly what works and what doesn't, and what works best. Then I basically have a very low boredom level, and I change jobs very often, like every 4 months. I did actually very well, but I got bored. But I got sick of industry, so I go from, like, I was in the manufacturing field, I was in the credit card field, I was in the association field, I was in the restaurant meatpacking field, I was in the real estate field, I was in the airline travel field, I was in the patent medicine field, I was in the mail order product field, I was in the collectible field, I was in, that's just up until about 28. And every time I switched industries, the first thing that became evident to me was, wow, the industry I just came from, they think like this, they sell like this, their business model is this. This industry has no relevance, no reference, no semblance of similarity. They do it totally different. Is there anything from this that could be added here? And you do that over 10 or 15 years times 3 or 4. And then, because I always was intensely interested in entrepreneurs, and I always did part-time things in the evening, so you multiply that by, I mean, I was involved with magazines, I was involved with startups, I've done just an enormous number of things. And part of it's probably my God-given talent. I've got a weirdly wired mind that takes all that and processes.
And makes connections between things.
Yeah, the analogy I used to make, and you may be too young, the old $6 million man. Did you ever see?
Come on, I've seen that. Yeah, that was my favorite.
When it started, they had all this incredible matrix, and you saw all this crisscross. Well, my mind does that now. I've had so many different life experiences in so many industries from so many vantage points that I can look at a situation and I go. But it's
that even sounded like the $6 Million Man music.
Well, I mean, and we say that, but it's a little hard to explain. But we do. I got templates. I've organized all kinds of different. I've identified probably 100 leverage points no one sees. We got X factors that are things that you just change and they give you exponential growth. We got power principles that give you meaningful growth. We've got strategy points that change the whole performance. I got all these things, but only because as I evolved, I would take time and say, well, what's it all about, Alfie? What does this mean? And I'd sort it through and organize it in different activities. Now, I'm an ethical opportunist, and by that I mean if I can do something in 2 hours instead of 2 years, that's what I want to do. So I always tried to default to the fastest, safest, easiest, highest current and residual yielding activities you could go. And so I've concentrated on just things that have enormous enhancement, upside leverage, multiplication in the terms of what it delivers for a company in sales and buyers and prospects and conversions and profit and repurchases and referrals, and that's what I've done most of the last 20 years.
Now you've got some products and books that you've written, or what are some of the things that you have from a product perspective?
We have, we've sold $10,000 encyclopedias. We've sold $1,000 single volumes. I've got a general book in trade that's very modestly priced. We have training programs that are like $25,000. We have entry-level ones that are $5,000. But most of the things we do now are working with operating
Working
business.
with companies. That's
we prefer that because all of this this only happens if somebody takes action.
Right.
And a lot of people are very tentative. I mean, part of your work probably is to get them to believe in themselves, isn't it? To get them to break through the barrier and move from contemplation and theorization to transactionalization. And that's what we like to deal with. We like to deal with people who have a prejudice towards action. Highly motivated, not linear-minded, very open-minded, a prejudice towards taking action and a willingness to learn non-traditional thinking that's highly ethical but much higher performing than the standard. It's like not your mother's business growth type concepts. They're very simplistic, and yet they're very, very, very evolved and enlightened and very torqued down to very lowest common denominator where everybody can understand them.
Now, I know you do a lot of speaking, or you have in the past. You've done a lot of speaking, and it seems like you're gearing everything you do more toward the actual work with the companies, which is what you enjoy.
When I was younger, I mean, I'm
38.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm pushing 60. And with it comes comes more humility, more, not that you're not, but it just comes more humility, more wisdom, and more clarity on what you want and what you don't want. When I was younger, it was exciting, to have 1,200 people pay you $5,000 for 3 days, and your ego was stimulated. But I prefer being directly, I mean, we still do a little bit, but I prefer being directly involved with people behind the scenes, sort of being the non-acknowledged, I get paid very generous, but the mastermind who can strategize, who can course correct, who can fine tune, who can really engineer and pilot massive growth. And it's more stimulating for me because I can manage 12, 15 companies a year while we're talking, and it's a lot of leverage for me, and it's very stimulating as far as diversification. That's my and it's also, frankly, it's very lucrative, because if you can take a company that's making $1 million and you can make them 10, and you get a small share of that, and you do it for 12 companies, and you multiply that over a long period of time, it's very lucrative.
Sure. Now, like, let's say you've got a small business owner, somebody that's doing $1 million, $2 million a year,
Okay.
and they want to really increase that. What are some of the things they could do? Just some ideas that they could do immediately. Where do they look first? How do they start?
Yeah, there's a couple of very simple things. So let's just take a look at the average company. The average company is generating new buyers somehow. Okay, so the first thing is figure out where they're coming from and question the method, the concept you're using. And if it's just word of mouth, for example, probably 80% of all small, medium companies get 20 to 100% of their business from referrals or word of mouth. Now, that's interesting. What's shocking is almost none of them have even one formalized referral generating system or strategy in place to generate, maximize, sustain referrals from everybody all the time. We've been involved with so many industries that we've identified 93 referral generating systems that cost nothing. They just cost changing and shifting of effort, of time, what you say at the point of contact or effort, how you communicate. Well, referral generated buyers, they buy quicker, they negotiate less, they buy more, they're more profitable, they buy more things, they buy more often, and they refer more people. And yet most people in business, even if 100% of their business stems from referrals, they spend all their time screwing around with sales approaches or ads. And so we try to get people in alignment. That's one thing. The next thing you can do is reactivate inactive buyers. Almost every business has attrition. You know what attrition is. It's a finite number of people who used to buy from you no longer do. Almost nobody knows what the quantity or the number is. If they know what that is, they don't know who they are. When they figure out who they are, there's normally 3 reasons people stop buying. If you can understand which of those 3 they fell into, correcting that and reactivating it was very easy. They either basically had an interruption in their life that had nothing whatsoever to do with you, but they got negatively habituated. Maybe they got sick. Maybe they were traveling. Maybe baseball season started and they had to take their kid. But whatever it was, they stopped having a relationship with you, not because they didn't like or want or enjoy your product or service. They just stopped. All you got to do is re-engineer contact and demonstrate serious interest and concern about their well-being, and you'll get half of them back. The second is they had a bad experience. Maybe it didn't get delivered on time. Maybe the product didn't perform and the repair didn't come out fast. Maybe the delivery person got mud on their carpet or oogled their wife or their daughter. And it was nothing that the business owner would have consciously or knowingly allowed or ever even accepted if he or she knew about it. But if you call and engage an inactive buyer and just say, hey, if we did anything, I need to make the last transaction you do with my business a favorable one. So I insist on doing something wonderful with you now, and you give them a great deal, you can get half of those back. The third category of inactivity is somebody who outgrew the need. But they had a great experience. They're a perfect source of referrals. Those are just a couple of little things, but there's, I mean, we have like 100 ways to grow more buyers. We have like 30 ways to get people to buy more at the point of purchase. We have 20 or 30 ways to get them to buy more often and more, or get more utility. We got about 30 ways to, to penetrate new markets. We got 120 ways to ethically capitalize on other people's resources. But I've spent the better part of 25 to 30 years, I don't want to think about it, figuring all these out, and at different intervals stopping and saying, well, what new distinctions, what new category, what new accelerators have we figured out that we've never formally organized? And then we organize it and we get it, and it just adds one more layer to our ability to rapidly accelerate somebody's business.
So what would you say of all the accomplishments so far, what are you most proud about of everything you've done so far?
I'm proud of 2 things. I'm proud of all the people whose lives I've enriched, who've invested their whole life in. I mean, a business is like if you're serious about it, it's probably the biggest investment of waking time, and it can be the most fulfilling, the most frustrating. I've been able to help people not only multiply their current income, but create assets that had enormous wealth potential, relatively. You know, if you're a little business and you're making 200 grand, if I can figure how to get you 5 but make that worth $7 million when you want to sell it, and it was worth nothing before because you didn't have an exit model, that's pretty good. And we have, you know, we have on file, I don't know, 15,000 testimonials all over the world, businesses of all kinds. That's very gratifying. I've helped some extraordinary people, not unlike yourself, who had extraordinary methodology and technology, but needed help getting the market to appreciate its impact. You know, I've helped Tony Robbins, I've helped Brian Tracy, I've helped the Deming Organization, I've helped athletes who wanted to transition into business, and I've helped magazines, and so I've had a lot of influence in a lot of ways. I think that probably the more distinguishing thing that I'm very proud of, and this is sounding a little arrogant, but I have a concept called the strategy of preeminence, and it exalts the distinction and the way you interact with a client, a buyer, to such a level that you become their most trusted advisor, their dearest friend for life, and it transforms the connection you have with your marketplace, but it also transforms the gratification, the fulfillment, the enrichment, not just financially but psychically, that you get out of the process. Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, those are a couple things.
Now, what are you most excited about as you think of the future, the direction you're headed?
At this point in my life, we are going back to the future. I started out and nobody knew who I was. I had a dozen clients, and through a number of very bizarre accidents, I became this mega trainer of large groups of entrepreneurs and startups, and it's been very fulfilling. But as I said, we want to work just predominantly with operating businesses that want to grow significantly and sustainably and build their asset base, and that's more exciting to me because I like to be connected to real commerce, and I like to be on the front lines of capitalism.
Now, I think that's fantastic. How can people get a hold of you if they want to do business with you or want to find out more about you?
The easiest way is they can call my office, and they're welcome to talk to us. We'll always evaluate anybody's situation as long as they're in that sweet spot. If they're a startup, we're not too terribly enthusiastic just because they're not ready. If they're too big, believe it or not, there's too many tiers of corporate bureaucracy to sell, and I'm not very good in the boardroom. But I'll give you the number.
Yeah,
it's 310 area code. It's in the United States and California, 265-1840. We keep normal California business hours 9 to about 5:30, and they're welcome to call. And I mean, you can reach us at abraham.com too. It's got some nice things on it. They're welcome to visit that.
Very cool.
Thanks
for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother.